Good afternoon. Welcome to NCMA Boston, and thank you for coming to our first event of the NCMA Boston year on improving very small business participation in the DIB, reducing roadblocks to success with Don Shannon. Before diving into our presentation, I wanted to briefly talk about our chapter. NCMA Boston is one of the oldest and one of the largest NCMA chapters. This year, we're celebrating 63rd anniversary. All of us are volunteers, and we're here to benefit our profession. We have a lot to offer you this year, and Don Allen will share our program year in a few minutes. First, I want to personally thank officers team, our board of directors, and our guest speaker for their time and commitment. Our chapter has monthly events around the greater Boston area, as well as webinars. Our annual signature event, the Boston March Workshop, was held on March 13th. Hope you enjoyed it. We already have next year's date confirmed, so please save it on your calendars. Once again, it'll be on March 13th. We're looking forward to seeing you at Bentley for a full day of training and networking. I also wanted to let you know that we have restructured last year, and we're offering a low-cost, high-value programming for all acquisition professionals with well-known speakers across the country. We also introduced a new feature last year, the Get to Know the Speaker topic series. It's our YouTube broadcast that is posted to our website, ncmaboston.org, as well as our LinkedIn page with our VP of Broadcasting, Adam Cohn, interviewing each speaker prior to each event. We hope that you take your time prior to signing up to any webinars or in-person events to listen to our speaker broadcasts and learn about each speaker and the topic they're passionate about. Please follow our LinkedIn page and visit ncmaboston.org to register for all upcoming events. We're planning our year right now, and we'll release our monthly schedule very soon on our website. Our second event will be a kickoff social event, and we would love to see you in person to celebrate our new year on August 27th at 5:30 to 7 at the City Point Brewery in Waltham, Mass. And before I pass the mic to Don, I want to give a quick reminder. Remember that you get CPs for attending our educational events, including our March workshop, which you can use to apply and to renew your NCMA certification. Monthly CPs do add up, so we hope you join us monthly, and we hope you consider attending all our in-person and webinar programs. And now I would like to introduce Don Allen, our VP of Programs, who will introduce our guest speaker, Don Shannon.
Sorry about the technical difficulties, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
You're muted. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Very faintly. Try again.
Okay, let's see. How about now? Is that better?
Can everybody hear? I can hear them. Folks in chat, let us know if you can hear. Outstanding. Don, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Sorry about the sound difficulties. moving from computer environments, moving cameras and mics and everything. Sometimes these things happen. So hopefully everybody can hear me now. I'm usually pretty good at projecting. So if I'm too loud for some, it's a mixed bag, right? So looking at our slide deck, Ali alluded to some of our greatest event, or one of our most popular events is coming up. Ours is a voluntary organization. So every year when we kick off our new year, this being the first event of our fiscal year, essentially. Let's jump over to our next slide there. There we go. You'll see in August, so Tuesday, August 27th, we are hosting our annual social kickoff for fiscal year 2025. This event hosts our board. So come on out, get to meet our board. We're going to be hosting at City Point. It's a wonderful craft brewery out in Waltham, Massachusetts. So we try to make it centrally located right off of 95 for everyone. Our board members are going to be there. It's a great time to come meet everyone. Our officers will be there in person as well. This is a couple-hour event, so it's definitely a great time to come out and socialize. We'll do a couple of presentations for everybody, but it's also our call for volunteers. So we're always looking for new people to come in and replace our officers or help out during our events. It really takes a village, as you can see from your host today. Each event has a lot of logistics working behind the scenes. So anybody that you think, anybody in our industry that wants to come out, please join us. It's all hands welcome event for you to meet everyone in our industry, see if you can volunteer for any of our events, or even join as an NCMA officer next year. We would love to have you and get to meet you. So please come out Tuesday, August 27th. The event kicks off 4:30. We're doing a board meeting. So it's a little bit more formal, but by 5:30, it's going to be a very open air event for everybody just to visit. We have a room set aside right there at the establishment. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. It always is. Please come out and visit us. So without further ado, and check it out, ncmaboston.org, please. Without further ado, I'm going to be introducing today's event. And today's speaker, Don Shannon. I think many of you that have been in our industry for a while have either heard of Don or seen him at different events. He works very closely with our larger national events. And Don Shannon, he's working as a senior government contracts and proposal consultant currently, known as the contracts coach out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. He previously was the senior contracts manager with Schaefer Corporation in Albuquerque in 2013, a senior contract specialist at the Bureau of Indian Affairs. That's got to be a fun one. And Lord knows a lot of us can probably use that as part of our small business participation. And a contract administrator and deputy program manager with ABB North America at locations in Auburn Hills, Michigan, and New Berlin, Wisconsin. Mr. Shannon's credentials include a Bachelor of Arts in Business Administration from St. Leo College and a Master's of Science degree in Logistics Management from the Air Force Institute of Technology. He holds numerous professional certifications, our CPCM, our NCMA CFCM, and a Project Management Professional PMP from the Project Management Institute, our PMI. Mr. Shannon is the recipient of numerous awards, including the NCMA's 2021 Outstanding Fellow Award. He presently serves as a committee member on the National NCMA Board as a member of the NCMA Editorial Advisory Council. If you look back to the NCMA or Contracts magazine in June, I believe you'll find, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's constantly a contributor to that magazine. And the National Defense Industry Association, NDIA, IPMD Working Group, writing the Contracting with EVMS Requirements Handbook, always a useful one for the EVMS contracts. He is also a nationally recognized author and speaker who has published numerous articles in Contract Management Magazine, which I alluded to shortly, the Journal of Contract Management, and is the author of 2 NCMA National Education Seminars. Needless to say, he is an icon in our profession. You get a chance to talk to him personally today. Our Q&A session will be held in the last 15 minutes. I see Don has popped up on the screen. I'm going to be jumping backstage. Love to have you here, Don. As always, the floor is now yours, sir.
All right, I intend to show my screen, or share my screen. So if you're projecting the slides, let me go ahead and do that. Thanks. Okay, so I'm going to start the slides right now. So today's presentation, basically, can everybody see the slides? I lost view of the screen when I went to this. So I'm hoping that everyone can still see my slide deck. So I'm going to be talking about identifying and overcoming obstacles that prevent small businesses from participating in the defense industrial base and GovCon in general. This is my kind of resume there, and that's me at World Congress last year in Nashville. Notice I'm representing the NCMA Rio Grande chapter because I am the incoming president of the chapter. So starting off, it's good to be a small business. Why is it good? Well, the first thing is set-asides. Contracting officers are required to set aside for small businesses that are below all acquisitions that are below the simplified acquisition threshold, which is generally 250,000, but could be more. It also means the contracting officers will be using simplified acquisition procedures. And if you qualify as a, quote, non-traditional small business in the DoD environment, and I'm going to drill down into this a little later on, there are some other benefits that will accrue, such as all of your products or services will be deemed as commercial. They can use FAR Part 12 in acquisition procedures in lieu of Part 15 for contracts up to $7.5 million. They rely on your contractor established quality system rather than requiring you to have a government approved system. And most importantly, to many of our small businesses, very strong protections for data rights. That means that the government data rights are limited to only the technical data and the rights that they would customarily provide a commercial client, and that there's no need and no recourse for the government to get copies of their software source code or anything of that nature. However, getting into the small business arena and successfully competing is an uphill climb. I don't know what the audience composition is today. I don't know if you can take a poll, but it would be interesting to find out how many truly small businesses that we have in the audience, how many people are government contracting officials, 1102s, and how many people are prime contractors looking for subcontracting opportunities. But regardless of which of those channels that a small business enters GovCon through, they face an uphill learning curve. There's a very strong GovCon language, culture, and business practices that are kind of unique to create a unique culture from the commercial environment. I know that when I've talked with commercial entities that are first entering the GovCon environment, and these include some fairly large companies, they have no idea about certain of the terms, conditions, requirements, and even the accounting practices are different between commercial and government entities. Consequently, those are perceived as roadblocks or barriers to entries, and many small businesses that either don't enter government contracting or enter government contracting face all of these overwhelming challenges and then drop out. So I'm going to show you a little snapshot of where we're at and what we can do about it. So the first thing I would like to do is talk to you a little bit about the state of small business participation in the defense industrial base. And Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin was quoted as saying this: despite their significance to the defense mission, the DoD has yet to utilize the full potential of small businesses. And consequently, DoD has stood up a new office to work directly with small businesses. Farouk Mirza said in a opinion piece in the, I believe it was The Hill, this trend of decreased small business participation has several causes, but one of them is working with DoD as a smaller firm isn't always easy. And boy, is that an understatement. Small businesses don't have the same resources that larger firms do to help comply with DoD regulations and practices, which can discourage them. Finally, from DoD Small Business Strategy in 2023, the resources required to safeguard data and systems from common and advanced persistent threats can put a strain on companies of any size, but resource-constrained small businesses are particularly vulnerable. Thus, coping with the cybersecurity and the CMMC requirements is a significant roadblock. In case you didn't know, there are some things that are happening in legislation and a recent change to the DFARS that you should be aware of. The first is House Rule 7988, which is now requiring agencies to report the number of new small business entrants as part of their scorecard reporting. Previously, all they did was identify the total number. They didn't identify how many of those entrants were new. And so now they will be reporting entrants who are awarded a first prime contract by the federal government. The second thing I'd like you to kind of think about a little bit is something that's called industrial mobilization. And this is a very interesting loophole in the Competition and Contracting Act, which allows waiving a full and open competition when it's necessary to award a source or sources to maintain a facility, producer, or manufacturer for the event of a national emergency and to keep vital facilities or supplies in business. So consequently, the Act allows for contracting officers to award contracts non-competitively to U.S. companies to maintain U.S. sources of supply for essential technologies and products. This is especially important if the only source of, or the current source of supply is a foreign entity. This act allows the creation of a parallel U.S. entity, even though it may be slightly more expensive, to maintain a capability that we can reach out to and use in the event of conflict. Here's the current state of the defense industrial base. I'm talking right now about all size business entities, and I've overlaid this with some of the key cybersecurity requirements that have been released. So if you're familiar with the cybersecurity program, you'll realize that it started with an executive order back in 2011, which then resulted in a law called FISMA, which then resulted in the release of a DFARS clause, 252.204.7012, and concurrently a FAR clause, 52204-21. And you can see how the decline kind of follows that timeline. So existing DoD vendors are down from 67,000 to 52,000. That's a decrease of 22% in 9 years. And that all took place prior to COVID. New vendors entering the defense industrial base, 15,000 a year back in 2010, and down to about 5,000 per year in 2019, which was the most recent data provided. And so that's down 66%. But it's even worse for small businesses. Here's the small business status. And again, those same kind of events are charted on here. And you can see that it's been a decrease of 15,000 small businesses in the defense industrial base in the period 2012 to 2020. That's a decrease of 67%. Yet the Department of Defense is meeting all of its spending goals. As a matter of fact, they've exceeded their spending goals in recent years. They're 104% or better of their spending goals. So how is this possible? Well, the number of small business contract actions dropped nearly 70% from fiscal 2011 to 2016. But during that same time frame, the value rose by 290%. So what we're seeing here is fewer companies, and I assert these are companies that are towards the larger end of the small business size spectrum, are receiving more money through fewer and larger contract actions, and that smaller businesses at the lower end of the size spectrum are being starved. So what do I mean when I say small versus very small? Well, here's a comparison that I put together for a journal article that was published this year in the Journal of Contract Management, comparing the breakout, or showing the breakout by number of firms and number of employees in that firm, to show you just what the composition is. And the key takeaway from this is that very small businesses, that is 7,225 of the 9,336 businesses that receive government contracts, that's about 77%, were less than 20 employees. Yet the dollars awarded to them were significantly disproportional. Many of these awards were low dollar award contracts. They were contracts for things like commercial items, or COTS items, basically, janitorial and cleaning services, security services, groundskeeping services, and then R&D awards such as CIBRs. So the real meat and the real money is going to the companies that are basically over 20 employees in size, that constitute about 23% of the defense industrial base. One of the reasons that we don't see more small businesses coming into the market and staying in the market is the complex business system requirements of the federal government. And I think that picture just kind of sums it all up. You know, don't worry, you'll grow into them someday. The problem is that small businesses are hit with these very complex requirements the first day that they become a government contractor, and are expected to be compliant with those procedures. Towards that end, the Section 809 panel met with more than 50 small companies. At least 30 of those explicitly said that doing business with the DoD is too complex and burdensome. And one of the things that they pointed out was cybersecurity was a big influence on their not being competitive or willing to compete in that market. So in effect, the government expects small businesses to have many of the same mature systems in place as other, read that, larger defense industrial base participants, effective with their first contract award. And that's simply not possible. So what are we supposed to be doing? Well, if you haven't already done it, the first thing that you need to do as a small business is get registered in SAM, the System for Award Management. It is free. If anyone tries to charge you for that, tell them no thank you, and go off to your local Apex Accelerator office, and they will help you. And I've shown a little screen clip down here about some of the services that my local, that's the state of New Mexico's small business, Apex Accelerator provides for small businesses, and they are at no cost. Okay. And then the other thing is, when you're registering in SAM, be sure that you register in the Small Business Administration's dynamic small business search tool. That will place you on a list that is accessed by contracting officers searching for small business set-asides. And yep, if you can read the slide, that's me. I just went in this morning and renewed my registration in SAM for another 12 months. Another thing that small businesses can do is look for opportunities on specific portals. So while sam.gov is the official entry portal, many agencies maintain their own portals that are geared to the agency's specific needs. So here you see a specific government portal and the contracting opportunities that it's advocating, and those may or may not appear in SAM, depending on a number of factors. FAR Part 5 does not require every solicitation to be advertised or posted to SAM. So these agency portals may have opportunities that will not appear in SAM. Okay, so here are some of the agencies that have portals, and one of them is the Acquisition Research Center, and there you see the URL. I'm hoping these slides will be distributed as part of the presentation materials for this webinar, so that you'll have that link available to you. But the Acquisition Research Center is basically all of the intel agencies use that to advertise their small business needs. And one of the interesting things is that I found is that small business registrants are underrepresented in that portal. So here you can see that 94,000 woman-owned small businesses are in the DSBS. That's the dynamic search product, but only 1,000 of them are in ARC. So that's down around 1%. Same thing with small disadvantaged veteran-owned small businesses. HubZone, 8As, what have you. So, this was addressed by Neil McDonald in an article on June 24th, and I've included the link for that article. It makes good reading. Okay, so let's talk about some of the barriers to entry and or staying in the DIB. We've already touched on the cybersecurity thing, but here are some of the commonly opined barriers. So the first is funding and liquidity. Cash liquidity is a huge issue. JP Morgan has noticed that those who have larger cash, not cask, buffers may be more successful. Confusion or lack of knowledge over government cybersecurity requirements. I'm going to drill down into that topic here in just a minute. And then complex management approaches that are intended to minimize government risk. And those are things like accounting practices that are not aligned with your typical generally accepted accounting principles that are used by commercial entities. Highly structured quality assurance in manufacturing systems, such as ISO 9001 or AS 9003 being required. DoD directed technology and manufacturing readiness level requirements. I'm struggling with that right now. Government property and material management, and so on and so on and so on. So, excuse me, going back to cash flow. Small businesses are usually strapped for cash at contract initiation. And part of that is that they may have made a significant pre-award investment to obtain the contract. Many of them don't have dedicated what we would call B&P or bid and proposal funding. And my experience is that competing for a government contract can very easily take between 1% and 3% of the contract value for moderately large government contracts. And it doesn't scale linearly. Smaller dollar value contracts may require many of the same activities and end up costing the small business more to propose than it would for a large business building a proportionately larger contract. Many of the small businesses will usually need some form of a loan. Part of that can be assisted by the Small Business Administration or by establishing things like a commercial line of credit loan using the contract as collateral. And that does happen quite frequently. Small businesses also can depend on negotiating generous payment terms from suppliers. The normal payment terms are net 30. Getting those terms extended to a net 60 or net 90 provides the small business a little bit of breathing room. Consequently, it's not uncommon for small businesses to dip into their personal cash reserves, and it kind of creates a boom or bust or make or break situation. If they cannot win the award and successfully execute the contract, they may lose a good share not only of their potential revenue, but they may also lose money that they've pulled out of their savings and used to fund the project. A lot of small businesses don't know how to do pre-award cash flow planning. There's little use of financial modeling by these businesses and very little integration of risks or uncertainty. There are a number of training courses and some software tools that will help with that. I think this is an area where PTAC and NCMA chapters have an opportunity to work with their small businesses and provide them with some of that information. Small business planning does not usually include or consider, that the contract may not get awarded. And oftentimes they get caught out. And it becomes a case of where the contracting officer says, we will award this the 1st of April. And then come the 1st of April, the contracting officer says, April Fool, we're not awarding it until June 30th. And now that the business who has set aside resources and planned for that revenue is left kind of holding the bag. There's not a great deal we can do about that other than to understand the impact of those types of decisions and to strive for prompt awards. Many small businesses, especially when they're doing their first contract, have very heavy upfront expenses. In other words, they're using contract revenue or plan on using contract revenue to capitalize certain improvements in their business. Consequently, they will invest pretty much their own resources and a lot of time and energy up front to get long lead time material or equipment. And then they have to try to amortize that across the contract revenues. This is where structured payments and flexible contract pricing or financing, can assist them. And then the contract subcontract payment terms usually do not include prepayment. So if the small business has to buy materials up front, they're oftentimes left funding the security deposits or upfront payments to their suppliers. Again, that can be cured through structured payments and flexible contract financing. So what should small businesses do? Well, the first is to negotiate hard. You're allowed to negotiate hard. Hard bargaining, short of coercion, is permitted for both sides. So once the government has come to you and said, we intend to make an award, you're not going to send them packing usually to another awardee if you negotiate fairly in good faith, but hard to negotiate hard and protect your rights, and don't let them, especially prime contractors, take advantage of you. One of the things that most small businesses don't recognize is that that large business prime needs your participation as a small business to meet their small business dollar goals. And they need to be a little bit more flexible, especially with new or startup small businesses, to help them get over that hump and perhaps develop them as a long-term resource. Second thing is work with the Small Business Administration and your bank to obtain a line of credit. Another thing that you can potentially do, and this is part of that negotiation, is tell your prime contractor, if you're the sub, gee, I have to procure these long lead items. I either want to bill you when those items come in, or maybe even have you order them and then drop ship the materials to me so that I won't have to go through the acquisition process for that. And very frequently, that prime contractor will be able to get better pricing and better delivery terms by buying them themselves and drop shipping them. The biggest downside to that is making sure that the small business has an adequate property management system so as to keep track of those materials once they've received them. Try to negotiate pre or separate payment for upfront work, such as non-recurring engineering. One of the things that I've noted is that when I work with a small business, if there's any of that like non-recurring engineering upfront, where we have to set up manufacturing capabilities or unique capabilities for the product that we're making for a customer, I want that pulled out and put into a separate CLIN, and I want that to be payable separate from the production and delivery of the materials. If it's a commercial item, you can negotiate equitable milestone payments using commercial interim payments. That's as provided in the FAR 32202-2. And you can also take advantage of FAR 32009 for accelerated payments to small businesses. Okay, let's move into cybersecurity. And that was one of the things I really drilled down into in my journal article. The first thing is that the small businesses, which the government is trying to attract, will find that the cybersecurity requirements are disproportionately expensive. The DoD noted that it would cost small businesses over $100,000 to have a third party certify their compliance with level 2 requirements. And if you'll notice at the bottom of the page there, I put a big footnote and I said, well, let's talk about this. The article did not provide any information to support that claim. If we're talking about a very small business that is single office, less than 20 employees, my estimate is around 35 to 50K for the basic cybersecurity and about 20K for an additional assessment. So that's about a 70K cost, which is a bit below their 100 grand requirement. The department hasn't given any details on how much it will cost to comply with the cybersecurity rules that are already on the books, and CMMC is looking to enforce. Again, my estimate down at the bottom addresses some of that for the very small business. But the question is, how can I be expected to comply with government requirements if I don't even have an accurate estimate of how much it will cost? You know, I've got to make a business decision, and I'm weighing the cost of that cybersecurity against the potential benefits of having a government contract. As Lloyd Austin said, small businesses don't have the same resources. So that's a big issue. But the next bullet, I want to make particular attention to this. Despite the cost of compliance, if you have a government contract, and that is either with, it's not agency specific. It could be with any government agency, not just DOD. Knowingly failing to meet the cybersecurity obligations carries significant False Claims Act risk. And there are two clauses that you need to be aware of. The first is the familiar DFARS clause, 252-204-7012. But there's also the basic FAR clause, 52-204-21. And both of those requirements apply to anything other than commercial off-the-shelf items. Okay? So compliance is not an option, it's a requirement, and your cost of compliance is going to vary with your agency, DOD or other government agency. Why? Because DOD for level 2 or 3 requires third-party CMMC assessment, and whether or not CUI is present in your contract, which means you're going to be at level 1, or possibly, you know, that no CUI, it would be level 1, CUI would be level 2 or 3. So here's some of the things that are weighing down on very small businesses. The first is information overload. If you go on the internet and try researching this, you are going to be overwhelmed with information. You're going to get a lot of it focused strictly on DOD and CMMC, with no attempt to differentiate between the DOD and other government agencies. And consequently, there's going to be a lot of conflicting and overlapping information and opinions of various self-professed security experts, many of whom are CMMC assessors, C3POs, and they want to drum up business consulting dollars. And the CMMC marketplace is a huge cash cow. And consequently, there's very strong competition for it and a great number of conflicting claims about who can do what and what you need to do and so forth. So I'm going to try to debunk that a little bit in the next couple of slides. I'm going to give you some facts. First of all, your contracting agency will influence the cybersecurity requirements. DOD has an agency supplement, that's the DFARS, that has specific instructions that, including CMMC, that are applicable to DOD contracts. But every federal contract for other than commercial off-the-shelf has some level of cybersecurity requirement. And that would include the 15 or 17 requirements, depending on how they're counted, that are in 52-204-21. The basic cybersecurity requirements, that FAR clause and or cybersecurity level 1, address what's known as federal contract information, FCI. That is not CUI. there is a distinct difference between FCI and CUI. The distinction being is that CUI is required to be provided certain protections by law or regulation or written policy, whereas FCI is simply information that is shared between the government and the contractor that is not publicly releasable. Okay, force having CUI requires the contractor to provide adequate security. Fine. What is that? Well, if you drill down and you do a lot of research, you'll end up back at OMB Circular A30 in Appendix 3, where the term adequate security is defined as shown on the slide. Okay, so it's commensurate with the risk and the magnitude of harm resulting from loss, misuse, or unauthorized access or modification of the material. Non-DoD agencies are required to advise contractors of any additional requirements over and above those that are in the basic FAR clause if they provide contractors with or require contractors to develop CUI. And this is an excerpt from the clause. The so-called other specific safeguarding requirements that are mentioned in the FAR clause are embodied in the 97 requirements, used to be 110, in the NIST 800-171, now Release 3. And those controls or requirements are distilled, if you will, from the controls that are in a separate document, NIST SP 800-53, which applies to government systems as opposed to contractor systems. So one thing that you can conclude is NIST SP 800-171 compliance should be expected irrespective of the agency, DOD, Department of Interior, Agriculture, Bureau of Indian Affairs, IRS, FAA, well, FAA doesn't follow the FAR, or what have you. If you've got CUI, then you have to be compliant with 800-171. And that would be essentially the 97 requirements that are in there for CUI. The DoD is unique for now in establishing a compliance verification process. That's where CMMC goes down a separate path. Other agencies may permit self-certification. Level 1 or the basic requirements can be self-attested, but DoD is unique in that they are pressing for third-party assessment of compliance. So meeting those cybersecurity requirements. As a small business, my company, Don Shannon LLC, has to meet the basic cybersecurity requirements if I'm going to have federal contract information on my system. And I frequently do in the form of solicitations and other documents. And so I have to meet the 15 requirements that are in the FAR 52-204-21. So what did I do? Well, the first thing I did is I went through and I did or created policies and procedures. And going through that process, what I found is that sample policy templates are available from a variety of sources. I'm showing one on the left side of this slide. You can also pay about between $8,000 and $10,000 to purchase those and have somebody assist you in completing them. Most of the very small businesses already have physical security measure and visitor control in place. If they don't, adding it is pretty straightforward. Then comes the actual technical side of things, and that is basically going through and making sure that your network and your computers have specific security features enabled. We call this hardening. It includes malware protection, vulnerability protection, patch management, and so forth. Again, my research shows a number of those requirements can be met through free or very low cost services. And I've provided you some links to a number of those services that I use personally and have had good results with. So following this template or this plan of action, if you will, if you are dealing strictly with the basic FAR requirement or the cybersecurity level 1 for DoD, a small business could meet those requirements, spending somewhere between the $8,000 and $15,000 in an investment. And my experience kind of echoes that. If you're going to move beyond that into having CUI, then it's going to take more robust requirements. So you're going to need to have more comprehensive policies and procedures, including a system security plan. You're going to need to have a more robust network with some of the features that are shown here on the slide. Many people use Microsoft 365 Government Moderate or Government High to meet these requirements. If they do, the cost of migration from your existing system to that Microsoft Government High, I estimate somewhere in the $8,000 to $10,000 range for consultants to assist you in making that transition. You're going to also be establishing your network as a domain as opposed to just a uncontrolled work group and so forth. Total investment in the range of 30 to 50K just to check the boxes to say I'm ready for an assessment, and then another 15 to 20K for a very small business. We're talking less than 20 employees, and easily 50K for larger companies to have a third-party assessment to determine whether or not you meet those requirements. And the flip side of that is to remind you that this does not include IT costs. In other words, the cost of your Microsoft 365 equipment, hardware, any of that other stuff. And it does not include software licenses. And, oh yeah, by the way, that assessment is required every 3 years. So you can see now why small businesses are really kind of looking at this and saying, wow, that's a tough nut to crack. One of the things that is possible in addressing this is a concept I proposed in my Journal of Contract Management article. It's called Cybersecurity in a Box. I get a lot of pushback from various practitioners saying that you can't do it. I say, you know what? If you can define the environment that it's going into adequately, and that's where the caveat about very small businesses comes into play, then it's possible to do this and spend a lot less money doing it. And so those of you who are interested in this concept, please grab a copy of the journal. It's free. It's from the National Contract Management Association's website, and it should make a good read. So moving on, if you thought cybersecurity was bad, oh, you haven't seen the half of it. This is a new one that caught me kind of unawares because I haven't been dealing with a company that was a startup in the manufacturing environment that had to have what we call flight qualified hardware. And so one of the things that the government has is something called a manufacturing readiness level assessment. And if the acquisition is for the DoD buying products that are non-commercial in nature or modified commercial in nature, and those products have to be used in a weapon system like an aircraft or a submarine or what have you, this manufacturing readiness level is one of their key risk reduction tools, and it is used not only at the prime level, but I have seen it and I'm dealing with it being flowed down to the subcontractor level, and we're talking about a 3-employee shop. So one of the things that it requires is factual representation of specific characteristics to verify or to validate that you have met certain criteria by various milestones in the acquisition process. So if this is the acquisition process, if this is the manufacturing readiness eye chart, you can see that at the top there are some yellow triangles, A, B, and C. Those represent or align with milestones in DoD 5000.2 for the acquisition activities. And under that are the manufacturing readiness levels that must be achieved at each of those milestones. The project that I'm working on right now is coming up on milestone C, where we're going to go into low rate initial production, and we have to attain a manufacturing readiness level of 8 in order to cross over into doing that. Here is a chart that shows you what manufacturing readiness level 8 looks like all the way over to the right. And you can see it starts out with A1, A2, A3, or B1, B2, and goes on. I can tell you that these are really down in the minutia kind of requirements, very difficult for a new contractor to understand and to react to. And those are, of course, keyed with the various acquisition strategies, most likely the so-called major capability acquisition, but it could be one of the other ones as well. But there's going to be a lot of bureaucracy going back and forth. But the new small business is going to need a lot of help dealing with those requirements. And I have spent a considerable amount of time working with my client. And here's one slide. This is slide number 38 out of 111. And this is just dealing with one of the requirements. Have the requirement for flow down processes been verified? Okay, and so we say, yes, they have. And on the right, the artifact shows that, we have a purchase order to the supplier. We sent them a drawing of what we wanted included. They have their working drawings down there in the lower quadrant, showing that they're using those to inspect the product. So this is the level of detail that they want to get to manufacturing readiness level 8. So if that is included in a small business contract, my advice to primes is be prepared to assign someone to train and work with your small business subcontractor, because ultimately it's your prime contract that's being evaluated by the government agency for this manufacturing readiness level, but your subcontractors are a huge contributor to that, and you need to help them. This is no different than what it would be with helping them provide information that you would need for earned value or any of the other systems. Okay, let's talk about something that we call non-traditional defense contractors. And real quickly, there was a recent DFARS clause that was published identifying that supplies and services provided from non-traditional defense contractors. And in essence, what it does is, number one, is it says these supplies can, this status can be used for the contractor to use the commercial exception at FAR 15403-1, B3, to avoid providing certified cost or pricing information. And it also can be used to classify their products or services as commercial products or commercial services. Now, this was supplemented by a memo from John Tenaglia in May of 2024, who basically notified contracting officers that they can make a determination for their suppliers and their subcontractors, as long as they meet the definition of the non-traditional defense contractor, which means you haven't had wait a minute, lost it. CAS. You haven't had a CAS covered contract in the preceding year. Okay, it permits using FAR Part 12 procedures, simplified acquisition procedures. If you're a small business, there's set aside opportunities, reduced documentation requirements, no certified cost or pricing, improved flexibility, and reduced burden of compliance. Okay, one of the next things that a lot of our small businesses have to deal with is the idea of dealing with the business and accounting system requirements. Businesses generally need an acceptable accounting system to do anything other than a firm fixed price contract. However, getting that acceptable accounting system, there's some question as to what route you have to go down. Many people believe that you need a DCAA audit to receive that finding. That is true if and only if your major customer by volume of business or dollar volume of contracts is the Department of Defense. Otherwise, the DoD is not what we call your cognizant federal agency. That would be the agency that you do the most business with, and they have the ability to make a determination as to whether or not you have an acceptable accounting system. And they can do that by any of those bullets at the bottom of the slide. They can review your accounting system documentation, they can do an on-site evaluation, or they can accept the results of a third-party audit. All of those are permissible. The acceptable accounting system provides a broader range of contracts and payment options. It provides enhanced credibility to the small business and the ability to establish agency-approved indirect rates. And that's a big deal, because if you're stuck with fixed price contract, recovering the cost of cybersecurity is extremely difficult, because you basically have to factor that in to the one contract, the one fixed price contract that you need it for, and you now have priced yourself out of the market. However, if you have indirect rates where you can proportionately share that cost of cybersecurity across multiple government contracts, it then becomes a much more palatable option. And this is one of the advantages that those companies at the larger end of the size spectrum have over your very small businesses that are sitting down at the other end of the spectrum. Another thing that is oftentimes discussed are quality system requirements. As I mentioned earlier, ISO 9001 or AS, I forget the number, requirements are very frequently cited by either the government or by the prime as a flow down to the sub. One of the nice things about having a commercial product determination is that you can push back on those and say that as a commercial item, you're sticking with your standard commercial inspection system and no special requirements are required. That won't hold water, however, if the product is going to be flight rated, as I said earlier, and there's what we call additional or higher level inspection requirements levied by the government. At that point in time, you're going to have to comply with one of the other standards. And that slide just talks about that. Okay, if you are a small business, or if you are a prime or an 1102 and are dealing with a small business that is struggling meeting these higher level quality requirements, then one of the things that you can do is you can refer them to your manufacturing extension partnership. It's government funded through, of all places, NIST. And the information about your Massachusetts MEP is shown on the slide to the right. Okay, so what should I have picked up during this roughly 45 minutes or an hour? Well, first of all, not all small businesses are equal. Some are smaller than others. That's one of the misconceptions that many government bureaucrats have, is that when they start talking about small businesses, they put them all in the same monolithic structure, and that's not exactly the case. The declining number of small businesses in GovCon is a fact, and it's more pronounced in the defense industrial base. Cash flow and liquidity are significant stumbling blocks, but there are ways, and I talked about some of those, where we can work around those liquidity and cash flow barriers, but it all starts with good planning on the part of the small business, and then carries through into contract formation and negotiation. Manufacturing readiness assessment, oh boy, that can be a real gotcha. I skipped over cybersecurity, but I think there is an inferred correlation between those heightened requirements and a decrease in small businesses. There may be other government requirements that are coming on board that are adding to that, but I think cyber is one of the primary ones. Accounting system and quality system requirements also can contribute to the barriers, but this is a place where MEP and your Apex Accelerator can be of assistance. I know that my local Apex does a class on accounting and how to structure a small business accounting system. And just remember that free expert assistance is available through those two agencies. Okay, that's it. Back to you. I think we're ready for some questions. So, okay, getting to my question in your article, when it comes to compliance, you state small businesses face a decision, either pay the high cost of compliance, get out of government contracts, or face severe penalties for noncompliance. You also state an option is hope you don't get caught. I understand you wouldn't advocate that strategy, but to what extent do you believe there will be those that roll the dice when it comes to cybersecurity compliance? Well, I can tell you that I saw a little article on LinkedIn yesterday that estimate that only about 33% of the folks that are supposed to be level 2 are actually level 2, and that the other 66% are likely fudging the data in some way or another. Now, it may not be an intentional fudge. Understand that I may think that I am fully compliant in everything that I have done to establish my business as a compliant, from a cybersecurity standpoint, business. But my opinion of what the requirements tell me to do, and that of an expert who comes in as an assessor or an auditor, and their opinion, they can be different. And they can say, well, that's not what the requirement says. And I go, well, that's not how I read the requirement. And now we're back to the traditional auditor auditee kind of give and take. But overall, I think there are a significant number of businesses, especially those that are cash strapped, that are kind of rolling the dice. I think the big boys have pretty well complied, but the minute I say that, we get another Quaytam lawsuit where someone like Raytheon gets taken to court for a False Claims Act violation because somebody asserts that they weren't doing what they said they were doing. Got another question? GSA best-in-class contracts like Oasis. Well, I think Richard. Hey, Richard, I haven't talked to you in a while. That's kind of the effect of bundling, isn't it? And I think that people have seen that those bundling contracts are disastrous for small businesses, and I don't know what can be done to put the toothpaste back in the tube, so to speak. But I think that one of the possibilities is perhaps for the development of consortiums of small businesses that can help compete for those types of contracts, those large dollar value GWACs, and then have an appropriate small business participation. But in that case, it would be interesting to see how that panned out, because that would open the door, for example, for the consortium to assist all of the members of the consortium with some sort of a cybersecure platform that they could work off of, instead of having each company independently develop their own resources and so forth. Just join the consortium and let the consortium provide a secure enclave. So that might be kind of fun to explore. More questions? Come on. Hit me with your best shot. Okay, Don, looks like I'm going to be turning it back to you. So, or Adam, over to you guys.
Oh, there we go. Can everyone hear me? Sound check. All right, great. Don, as always, fantastic presentation. I think the amount of information you give is so thought-provoking, as well as a heavy download. So we've got some great questions from the field today. Thanks so much, guys. It's definitely something that I think a lot of us have to consider quite regularly. The stats you just mentioned about how many people are actually in compliance recently was hair-raising. I actually took a note on that. I haven't read that article yet. It's definitely something I would like to look into. You know, there's a lot of concerns anytime you change something so fundamental to our industry. Here we go.
I saw that flash up.
Yeah, I think. Oh, got another question from the field here.
Urging them to start at some of the smaller DoD installations, and I think that's very oftentimes good advice. there may not be the volume of opportunities there, but access to key people to inform them of, your existence, your capabilities, and so forth, may be a little bit better in some of those organizations. And this is one of the things that our organization, our PTAC chapter, or I'm sorry, our Albuquerque chapter of NCMA is doing, is we've established a collaborative relationship with PTAC, as well as the Hispano Chamber of Commerce and a couple of other organizations, such as the Professional Aerospace Contractors Association of New Mexico. And we do a lot of information sharing. We do a lot of joint programming where we bring speakers to other people's audiences. So, we may bring someone from MEP in to address an audience of NCMA people to make them aware of what their capabilities are, things of that nature. So one of the things I do really advocate is collaboration. As we used to say when I was at the Air Force Institute of Technology, cooperate and graduate. So it's a good motto. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we can co-opt that one quite successfully into a few different initiatives. But yeah, I think that's excellent, because what we've seen in the past before is, getting set up is so difficult for some of these small businesses, and if you can collaborate, make it easier, all the better. One thing that we've actually encountered recently and has been happening a lot, which is good, but it's the evolution of small businesses to large and how that affects active prime contracts with the government, in particular, where we have small business participation goals we need to meet, how we calculate their numbers depending on when they went to become formally a large business, how they calculate that date. There's a lot that goes into that equation. I'm curious if you've had any experience with that in the past, any recommendations you might have run into, because it is definitely something that's it's kind of like your taxes. Nobody's really there to help you all the time, and especially if it's something new, but you want to get it right.
Yeah. I had an echo there. Okay. Where I've seen this, two instances within the last about 10 years in places where I was employed. The scenario is you get a small business, oftentimes an employee-owned company that becomes quite successful. They compete for and win small business set-asides that are of significant dollar value. They add staff. They're still kind of in that small business arena, but they're moving towards the larger end of the swim, or the deeper end of the swimming pool, and then they get bought out. So what happens is an investment company comes along and they grab 3 or 4 of these small businesses, they buy them up, they consolidate them, and then a couple of things happen, and most of them are not good. The first thing that happens is they end up with a mishmash of business systems, and somebody has to sort out how to get all the data from the various partners or mergers into a common system and get everybody trained and up to speed on how to use that common information. And many times a lot of stuff gets lost in the translation, including processes and procedures and corporate knowledge, as people are displaced because they're redundant or what have you. So that's a huge issue. The second issue is that the large entity that is acquiring these small businesses and bringing them in and merging them has expectations of continued revenue flow. And then what they find out is that the contract that these people were performing was a set aside, and that they no longer qualify for that set aside. So when the contract runs out, they're not going to be able to recompete that contract, and they're going to be left adrift. So
the old catch-22, right?
yeah,
We've
it
acquired you
certainly
because
is.
you've been so successful, but by acquiring you, now we're going to, you know, give you some hurdles to continuing that success. Yeah.
Yeah, and so in many cases, it may be more advantageous not to go there, you know. But especially if you want to continue to work in that particular environment, or if you want to service that particular customer. And I can be quite frank. I've gone through this twice now, and it seems that people generally have difficulty understanding that concept, and then when it comes around and bites them in the ankle, they're surprised. But
Well, I see.
going back to the business systems, I think is one of the biggest challenges.
It's funny because right away you hit it on the head. M&A, and that's in the small business space, I think, is so prolific. And it would be nice if we had more of a roadmap on how to approach such things. Both prime, small business, the whole gamut, all the stakeholders. So it looks like, I don't believe we've got, Richard Shearer just gave us another question here. Let's see if I can
Good for Richard.
Post it up here. Adam, can you grab that? I'm not, for some reason I can't. Thank you very much. Okay, so here we go. Let's read that.
Very good. I like that, Richard. And I tell you who else would love that. Cameron Holt would love that. I don't know if you know the General Holt or not, but
I think we had General Holt out a couple of years ago for, this was a national event. Just a reminder. So we have 5 minutes left, folks. Allie's putting on a reminder as well. You can get CPEs for this event through the NCMA national website. I'd like to do a 5-minute call out just to make sure this is your opportunity. One-on-one, Don Shannon, you want to put something in front of them, please? Don, it has been such a pleasure today. Let's see. Alan Berman, here we go.
I got a question, and we'll get to Alan's question. Post your questions. Sorry, I haven't been more here to address everybody. I've been out and about. Don Shannon, listen, between doing what you two and trying to talk to both of you and saying Don, and you both go, what? Don Shannon, we talked about cybersecurity. We talked about how much it realistically costs for some of these small business. Are there any government programs, grant funded or whatever, for people to be able to get money to do this cybersecurity? If not, does that mean the government is okay losing potential groundbreaking business because of maintaining cybersecurity requirements?
Yeah, this is a recurrent question, Adam, and it's come up many times. And basically, the government says, well, this is an allowable business expense according to FAR Part 31, and therefore you should be including that in your contract costs, or you're within your rights to include that within your contract costs, only to the extent that it's allocable and allowable. But the problem is, as I explained before, if you only have one contract that requires this, and you put $50K of cost on that contract for cyber, you've just priced yourself out of the market. So that's not going to help. The way that the larger companies do it is they factor it into their indirect rates, and they spread it over a number of contracts. So no one agency or contract is paying for the entire amount. And that's one of the steps that small businesses need to be able to take. And before they can do that, they have to have an acceptable accounting system and then get into some cost type contracts. As long as they're stuck with QuickBooks and a fixed price contract environment, it's going to be very difficult. Don Allen, just a quick note, just to show you what kind of guy that General Holt is. I reached out to him one time and I said, our chapter would really like to meet with you. He came to Albuquerque to Kirtland Air Force Base on a visit. aligned with his position as the Chief Air Force contracting person. He spent 3.5 hours at breakfast with our chapter, talking with us, answering our questions, and schooling us. And he took that time freely out of his own personal time. So that's
Wow.
just the kind of guy that we're dealing with.
Yeah, magnanimous. I thought we, and Allie, correct me if I'm wrong, you might have a better recollection than I do. It could have been more than a couple years back, but we'd had him for an event in the past. And yeah, to my recollection, it's just a wonderful individual, great at sticking around after. Which, speaking of, guys, so when we're online, we actually hold ourselves pretty strictly to our time frame. That's out of courtesy to our guests. So our guests have asked that we do so, as this is in the middle of the day and many people are scheduling events or meetings right afterwards at 13:30 Eastern Standard for those of us outside of the East Coast area, like Don himself. Thank you for everyone who is outside of our area. I know these events are growing for New England and Boston in particular. We've got people all over the United States now, and occasionally, even outside of that from what we've heard in the past, and definitely looking forward to more stories like that in the future. Next event coming up Tuesday, August 27th. Don, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. Reach out to me on LinkedIn or on NCMA Collaborate.
Perfect. Prolific offer. Please check out, an icon in the industry. Don, it has been a pleasure. More than that, it's been an honor. Love having you out. Hope to get you out again soon in the future. We'll come up with something to get
Next
you.
time, send me a plane ticket.
Yeah, plane ticket sounds good. I think we can work something out. Always a pleasure. Everyone, thank you for being here. Love having you as always. Great interaction. Hope to see as many of you guys as we can August 27th. And with that, we're going to call us adieu. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.